Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Just let me get my volume bumped up here. There we go. Same thing every day, I never learn. I'm kind of thick-headed that way. I don't know what's up. I gotta get a new chair. I don't like this one anymore. Something a bit more comfortable. Well, I'm Bruce McDonald, and this is, in fact, the Talamanca Review. It's Friday, the 19th of September. It's 7:42 p.m. And I'm just gonna talk. I don't have anything really on my mind, or I do in a sense, but some podcasts I have something very deliberate that I want to convey. Those are the butterfly wing ones. Today, I just think I want to bang around in the world a little bit and just do some politics, and talk about what's going on politically and everything, because I've never seen anything like this in my life. I think they're getting ready to arrest Obama, if they haven't already. And, this is going to send shockwaves through the American psyche. Trump is going to designate, or he already has, or he's going to designate Antifa a terrorist organization. So these are incredible times. Now, there's no great love lost between Bruce McDonald and Antifa. Let's just get that out of the way. But there's a bigger issue here that I have to address, and that is that I am starting to see some of the things the left was talking about. I thought they were being hyperbolic. I don't have to redefine that word, do I? Remember all the time we spent on that word? I thought they were just being dramatic, typical leftist nut bars in their exaggerated dramatic rhetoric. Now, I'm going to try, to be understanding about all this. And what I mean by that is I'm going to give the devil his due. And that means that I'm going to try to rationalize the increasing use of highly restrictive laws and the designation of political organizations or pseudo-political organizations within the United States as terrorist organizations. And the reason this strikes me so hard is that, when you talk about terror, you're talking about destabilization and destruction of society. Okay? So if we're going to start declaring American organizations, formal or informal, but Antifa has a lot of structure to it. There's financing. I don't think they have a corporate charter, but then again, neither do the cartels in Mexico. Basically, what Trump is saying is that the world is so dark now that pretty much a lot of people need to be treated as terrorists. So what happens when you get designated as a terrorist? Well, ask the people who spent, I don't know how many months or years in prison as a result of January 6th. They were tried under terrorism law. And the left was very quiet about it. You see, the difference between Trump and the left, and this I actually like about Trump, is he tells you what he's going to do. He's like Babe Ruth calling a home run, I'm going to put it in the left bleachers, and he points and he hits the ball and it's a home run and it's in the left bleachers. Say what you will about Trump. It's kind of admirable that he comes right out and says what he's going to do. I don't think, we've had any kind of leadership like that in quite some time. Antifa is responsible for a lot of public distress. I don't think that can be denied. Okay? That has to be acknowledged, that has to be stated, that has to be observed, that has to be noted and notarized in a legal sense. Antifa is one of the social forces responsible for the looting and destruction of quadrants of cities. Antifa is the organization that created chaos after the George Floyd fiasco. Now, I don't know how many of you have done a deep dive on the George Floyd thing. There was a lovely, intelligent young woman who wrote a book about George Floyd. I forget her name now. She's into bees, like she's a beekeeper. Robert Phoenix did a show with her about 1.5 2 years ago. And George Floyd was a total psyop. Derek Chauvin should not be in prison. So it's not like the left hasn't been doing these things. You know, like I said, the January 6th protesters were held in the absence of habeas corpus, which is Latin for bring forth the body, which is a legal expression for a bail hearing. So when habeas corpus goes away and you can just be thrown in a jail cell, and a lot of time was spent in solitary by the January 6 people. It was horrible treatment. It was some Guantanamo shit right in the middle of the US. So what is it I'm saying here? If you study the situation closely, there's no bad guy. You know, you can't point to the left and say, oh, they're completely evil, and you can't point to the right and say they're completely evil. Both parties have been inching the United States toward a totalitarian lockdown in their own way. Trump is absolutely, unequivocally doubling down on it. If Obama is arrested, Hillary will probably be arrested. Hillary Clinton is practically political royalty in the United States, and so is Barack Obama. Joe Biden, I think they'll leave him alone because he's a senile old man now. There's nothing they could really do with him, right? So they're just going to leave him alone. But I think this is these warrants and these arrests and this purge. And it's a purge. So the American political process has now reached the point where you don't just beat your opponent in an election, shake hands afterwards, and the people who lost the election wish the winning party best of luck for the betterment of the nation and all people in it. That's kind of how I remember most of the elections in my life. Although, I mean, it got pretty vicious when the Republicans went after Bill Clinton for the intern and the sex and all that nonsense. And I thought that was a bit heavy-handed. I'm fairly sexually liberal, right? Like, I think marriage has to be honored. It's the foundation of the family. Children have to be honored. But if you're single and uncommitted, I don't think it's the end of the world to, you know, go out and express yourself with casual, intimate encounters. You know, I've never been a huge guy for it, but I'm not a complete stranger to it either. So the whole thing about getting a blowjob in the White House, it never really rocked my world and stuck out as the kind of evil that the Republicans saw it as. Meanwhile, they're all at a Bohemian Grove, sodomizing young male prostitutes. That's the Republican sexual release. Democrats too at Bohemian Grove. But it was pretty vicious the way they went after Clinton. They really went after him. I really remember that well. It was right around the time my son was born. And I remember the chill over the country when it was announced that they were going to go into Iraq. I remember some op-ed writers being really braced by the Republican establishment in Ottawa, like to the point that you have the shit scared out of you. And but at that time they had all their operatives in place, right? Like they had all their neocons waiting in place at newspapers and stuff. And when the left tried to raise its voice, they were just jumped on with both feet. It was really really horrible what happened to Susan Sontag. She wrote a piece about the insanity of the war in Iraq, and she was eviscerated. I know people like David Frum, these really nasty neocons, just like destroying people. Destroying a person psychologically and reputationally when you're living in their world is a pretty serious thing, right? Because those people live on their reputations. So I guess, the only thing missing in the political process in the last 40 years that I've been watching it, let's say I became politically aware at 19, I'm 59 now. So yeah, I've seen some vicious street fights in politics. There's absolutely no doubt about that. But this is next level. This is like, holy shit, man. If they arrest Obama, if they arrest Hillary, if they arrest Comey, like I don't think I've ever seen anything like 8647. The seashells that James Comey arranged on the beach and took a photograph. 86 is homicide in police code, and 47 is the 47th president. So he was basically saying, kill Trump. That's a former director of the FBI. That's a pretty serious thing. I mean, whatever's happening at the top now, I don't think we really know what it is. But it seems to be gloves off. It seems to be like an Irish gypsy bare knuckle fight. And those are always ugly. So what do we think is underlying all of this? Well, within 48 hours of Charlie, or 72 hours or thereabouts of Charlie Kirk being murdered, there were a significant number of American legislators posing for a picture in Israel. They all flew over to Israel. And I found that amazing. Just amazing. Now, a lot of people, when they cover material like this, they get very partisan and there's a lot of invective. Sometimes they get a little worked up, but not so much anymore. I really and honestly do see the world as an unfolding divine plan. And I don't need to understand every part of it. I've advanced enough in my own awareness to know that everything that's happening is part of a larger plan. And the fact that I'm not aware of every detail of the unfolding plan doesn't diminish my faith. Now that said, as a human being, observing the circumstances going on around us, I would have to say that this is a takeover of the American government by Jews. Plain and simple. That when they got these intelligence organizations, they're going to replace them all with dual citizens or highly Israeli friendly Gentiles like Mark Rubio, stuff like this. And America is pretty much going to be run from Tel Aviv, if it isn't already. I mean, honestly speaking, if it isn't already. And you can see people talking around this all the time on the internet now. The CIA guys, for example, this guy.
Right. Fumble. That just the biggest fumble of the administration so far. He's being interviewed by Rachel Campos Duffy. She asks in the interview, are you going to release the John F. Kennedy files? Yes. Are you going to release the 9/11 files? Yes. Are you going to release the, this isn't it, because somebody was sitting to her right. I don't think that's the one. It's a different interview. Are you going to release the Epstein files? And then she said, that's the one. Let me see if that's the one, Rob. No, that's not the one. Are you going to release this? Are you going to release that? And then that's it right there. So if you can play this, I don't know if you've seen this or not.
Yes.
Okay. So if you've seen this, you know which one it is once we get the video to work. And then he finally, when they ask him about Epstein, he hesitates. Okay? And he doesn't want to release it for whatever reason. Now, we don't know what the reasoning may be. He says, well, sometimes, stories like that get other people involved, and we don't want to do that. Great. Then now, Pam Bondi, Kash Patel, all of these guys who have talked about Epstein. There's a video of Dan Bongino, who is on Tim Pool podcast, and he's being asked about, and you've been on Tim Pool before, and he's on the Tim Pool you have been on there, right?
Yeah.
I think you have been, yeah. And he's being asked about, well, I'm in the waiting room of Fox News, and this guy's telling me that, Epstein was Mossad, and and that's exactly what happened. Okay. And then now all of a sudden we get the report 3 days ago. Mm-hmm. No client list, no this, no that. And yesterday, when they're being asked about it, Pam Bondi says they found child porn. Mm-hmm. That's what they found, and that's what they don't want to release. Is that the video, Rob, the one that President Trump there is asked about Epstein? I think you just had the video. How long is that video, by the way?
This one is the shorter version.
No, you need the other one to find a Bondi one. But,
I have the entire one right here.
Play that one. Play that one because I want her answer to also be in it. And I got so many questions with this on the CIA side, but go ahead and play this clip here. Go for it.
Jeffrey Epstein, it left some lingering mysteries. One of the biggest ones is whether he ever worked for a American or foreign intelligence agency. The former Labor Secretary, who was Miami U.S. Attorney Alex Acosta, he allegedly said that he did work for an intelligence agency. So could you resolve whether or not he did? And also, could you say why there was a minute missing from the jailhouse tape on the night of the stabbing?
Yeah, sure. If I
Could I just interrupt for
Sure.
1 second? Are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein?
The moment that broke the internet. And this is why I'm so confused. This is why I can't figure out what's going on anymore. It seems like they're reversing roles. It seems like so much of what Trump said to get into power was just to get into power. And then once in power, he has a completely separate agenda. I recall quite clearly the chorus of voices saying that that list would be released. No doubt that that list would be released. Hello, yeah. In a second Trump administration. And yet it hasn't been released. Not only has it not been released, Trump did one of his classic moves that anybody who's ever dealt with him has spoken about this. From cabinet installers, kitchen cabinet installers for his condominium projects in New York, all of the subcontractors he stiffed and bankrupted. And you kind of, when you're caught up in the rhetoric and the passion of the election campaign, and he's saying things that you want to hear, you kind of forget all that stuff. Now we're all the cabinet installers. Now, you can call me simple-minded, childlike, innocent, virtuous, and all of those would be used in a derogatory way. But for me, the utility of children as objects of pleasure and satisfaction for decrepit adults is vile. In fact, I think it's one of the vilest things that you can do. And I'm not resting on any taught morality. I'm not resting on any entrained virtue. This is in the core of my being. Everybody in the world understands this. All the common people of the world understand this. First world, second world, third world, tribal, indigenous. You don't fuck with children, and you don't fuck children. You don't fuck little boys in the ass. You don't penetrate little girls. Everybody gets this. The fact that we even have to be speaking aloud about this in 2025 is alarming to me. Because in a sense, what we're doing is we're normalizing it because it's being brought out into the public debate. And once we lose the children, we lose everything. Everything. We don't have a society anymore. Children are meant to be raised by a mother and a father, ideally. I'm not against responsible adoption amongst the gay community. Responsible, but that we've seen some horror shows in that, but you can't really blame it on the gay people, right? There's straight couples that abuse foster children. There's straight couples who enter into the foster care service to pimp the children out to underground networks of child predators. And I, like most of you, find this particularly difficult to cope with, to digest. Even all the dark stuff I've dealt with in the books and in everything. This is the thing that bothers me the most. You know, it's a special kind of evil that takes pleasure in destroying innocence. It's beyond the beyond. We all have a self-centered and egotistical aspect to our sexuality. All of us. All of us have had times in our life where somebody has been enamored by us. We're not really that interested in them as a person, but they have certain physical attributes if you're male, and you just go in there and you use them. And you express yourself sexually in a very selfish way. That's pretty normal. And then if you're a normal human being, you kind of feel guilty about it afterwards, like really guilty. And then for days afterwards, you go, what the fuck is the matter with you? But I would consider that pretty normal, right? I would consider that to be a normal exploration of sexuality between surrender and power. The two polarities in sexuality are surrender and power. Surrender is the act of surrendering yourself to another human being, being completely open and communicating with that person through the body, and the interior self as well, the astral body. It's a multidimensional lovemaking. Very beautiful. And that's ideal. And then there's these other instances where, you just do what you do. I don't see anything wrong with prostitution. I think it should be made completely legal. I'm airing some of my liberal attitudes to you tonight, which I don't often share because most times I feel the need to speak on the conservative side of things. But again, I wasn't losing any sleep over Bill Clinton getting a blowjob in the White House, Monica Lewinsky. Who cares? He's the most powerful person in the world. He's got an unbelievable amount of stress in his life. So what? He's releasing some energy, rebalancing himself. Not a big deal. But like all of us, on the Talamanca Review, there are lines I don't even cross in my imagination. And children are on the other side of that line. There's not many things in this world that shock me, but the abuse of children truly shocks me. And if given license and jurisdiction to do so, I would kill these people. And I would not lose a moment's sleep. I would talk to them and see if there's any possibility of rehabilitation. But it's almost impossible to rehabilitate a child molester. You let them out of prison, they repeat offend. It's worse than crack cocaine. You got that guy from the IDF, the Israeli Defense Force, the guy way up who got caught in Washington, soliciting, I think, a 13-year-old boy, maybe younger, but I think 13. It's fucking weird. But this kind of stuff, like, for Trump to say that this is all said and done, we don't need to be talking about this anymore, is about the most ridiculous thing. You could feel his whole base shift when he said that. And Trump has always been an excellent reader of the room. And he was not reading the room. He was not reading America properly when he said this at all. Anyways, enough of my rambling on. Let's get back to what John Kirkow was saying.
This guy's been talked about for years. You're asking, we have Texas, we have this, we have all of the things. And are people still talking about this guy, this creep? That is unbelievable. Do you want to waste the time, and do you feel like answering?
I don't mind answering. President.
I can't believe you're asking a question on Epstein at a time like this, where we're having some of the greatest success and also tragedy with what happened in Texas. It just seems like a desecration, but you go ahead.
Sure. First, to back up on that, in February, I did an interview on Fox, and it's been getting a lot of attention because I said, I was asked a question about the client list, and my response was, it's sitting on my desk to be reviewed, meaning the file along with the JFK, MLK files as well. That's what I meant by that. Also, to the tens of thousands of video, they turned out to be child porn downloaded by that disgusting Jeffrey Epstein. Child porn is what they were. Never going to be released, never going to see the light of day. To him being an agent, I have no knowledge about that. We can get back to you on that. And the minute missing from the video, we released the video showing definitively.
That's a fumble.
The video was not conclusive, but
why would you release that video?
Evidence prior to it was showing he committed.
You've seen this, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Body language, your job is body language. Mm-hmm. You have to, as a sociopathic tendency, you have to be able to size up the other person's body language.
Absolutely.
When you see this here, you see the president, you see Bond, you see the way they're handling this topic.
Yeah.
In your mind, what are you speculating?
That they're deflecting.
Why?
I think that this is one of those things where they just don't want people to go deeper. And
Why?
I don't think it has to do with, like, I don't think people are going to be implicated if the people in the White House are going to be implicated in anything. I think it's more about protecting the Israelis, actually.
Why?
Jeffrey Epstein, in my view, is a textbook case of an access agent. I've said this before.
So there you go. And that's what I like about Kirkow, is he just comes right out and says it. And I don't know if you guys know this guy's background. He acted on a cause of conscience, in his CIA career. He blew the whistle on something, and they prosecuted him, and he did a couple years in prison, lost his pension, lost everything. So he's got an axe to grind. But the fact that he was terminated by the CIA for making public information that his conscience couldn't withhold, and I believe the story of conscience. I don't think he's acting here. I don't think he's on a triple blind, still working for the CIA. I think the other guy, Andrew Bustamante, is. There's something extremely creepy about that guy. Everybody is starting to notice it now. And he's the guy with the frizzy hair, everyday spy, and just a weird dude. And also made the argument about moving on from the Epstein material. Now, Kirkow says it straight up, we're protecting Israel. Now, and I think also another truth is Trump's relationship with Epstein, which is extremely disturbing. Trump's history as a sexual predator is completely documented. Completely. I don't think there's anywhere left for him to hide. The amount of shamelessness you have to go into politics now. Because you'd have to be almost psychopathic to not care that the entire world is talking about you as a pedophile. It doesn't seem to bother Trump that much. And so he's showing a side of himself in this second term that I think a lot of us are really surprised about. Now, another thing that's going on is a lot of the moral leverage he had. I'm going to clean up the deep state. I'm going to do this. I'm going to arrest these bad actors. This is not a good look for him to be on the verge of arresting Barack Obama, and more to come after that, high-level people. This is what I would call a first-time purge for the United States. It's not... Yeah, it's like the United States is going through its national puberty. This is not an uncommon thing in other countries. In the new countries, it is. And the new countries are the colonial outposts of Britain, of which the United States is one. And they've been on the inside since 1812, the War of 1812, brought them into the European financial system, and then it all got consolidated by Lincoln in the Civil War. So they're colonial now. They are British. They are a British colonial state in that sense. And these young nations, basically the Five Eyes minus Britain, have never put elected officials in jail before. Top officials like prime ministers or presidents. Now you look at Argentina, Brazil, Costa Rica. I mean, the ex-vice minister of justice is sitting in a holding cell as I speak, awaiting extradition to the United States as a key player in the narco-trafficking going on in Costa Rica, defined as such by the DEA. So it's all very interesting. The unfortunate part of all this is that Trump has to do this cleanup now under the cloud of being a pedophile and close associate of Jeffrey Epstein himself. And again, we come back to the Israel question, which our buddy here, John Kirkhow, does not shy away from. Okay? This is about protecting Israel. Now, I want you to think in a non-dualistic way now. I want you to forget the ping pong game for a moment. And I want you to seriously contemplate what is so important about the fate of Israel for the West. Why is the West so committed to the protection of Israel, even to the denigration of their own national characters, as is going on now in the United States and in Canada and in Australia and in New Zealand, while simultaneously, not so much Canada and the United States, this is a particularly British disposition, but allowing millions of Muslims into your country, of, let's just say, the lowest character of Muslim, politically violent Muslims. And that is not the Muslim world. And not at all. And if you think that, you've been brainwashed by Western media. The history of is the Islamic contribution to the concept of God, both through representative figures, saints, or highly elevated spiritual beings, can stand against any tradition. Now, the interesting thing is the highly evolved spiritual beings in the Islamic world, they usually get murdered too. But it's not like Christian Europe didn't murder saints. They did. It's not like the Jews didn't kill prophets. They did. But Islam is not what we're being told it is. Okay? The Islam we're seeing would be like judging the Christian world by inbred white people in the Appalachian Mountains in Virginia. That's what we're talking about here, because London is getting Afghanis, Pakistanis, and I mean, ask anybody in the civilized Arab world. That is like, basically, in their world, that's the insane asylum. And we're trying to be propagandized to believe that this represents the Islamic world. And the same critique goes for the Israeli world as well. You can't carpet bomb Jews. You can't hold the average Israeli citizen responsible for what Bibi Netanyahu is doing in the Levant, the Israeli parliament, and the Likud party, which is a far-right religious nutter party in Chabad, even though Netanyahu himself is probably an atheist. He can't make this shit up. Blaming the Israeli people for this, who were terrorized on October 7th, I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. I know all the arguments, the Hannibal Directive and all that. It's all true too. But nonetheless, you're living in a country of about 9 million people, and your walls are breached and a couple thousand people are killed, and hostages are taken by Hamas. I mean, it's terrifying. 2,000 people, that would that by 6 degrees of separation, that would spread through the whole society. Everybody would know somebody or know somebody who knows somebody. It would be very personal. And that kind of violence produces extreme trauma. All reason goes away when violence shows up. All reason goes away when violence shows up. We have to be used to violence. You have to be accustomed to it. You have to be a soldier or a street fighter or something like that, not easily rattled. You've had your nose cracked before. So I don't hold the Israelis responsible for what Netanyahu is doing. He was on the verge of being impeached. Basically having done to him what is going to be done to Obama. And he turned it around. But blaming the Israeli people or lumping them in with him would be like saying every American is responsible for the actions of George Bush Sr. and Jr. and, Dick Cheney and Donald Rumsfeld. It's not true. Right? And this pattern of politics not matching the world and the populations now is everywhere. Everyone is sort of being dictated to now. All notions of a free will cooperative between citizens and government is out the window now. It's moving closer and closer and closer to a tyrannical system. And I think a lot of these dualities we're seeing and these tensions are false. I think they're just orchestrated events to bring us to the eventual outcome, which is going to be a kind of global dictatorship. It seems pretty self-evident to me. I check myself every once in a while. I want to make sure I'm not getting cynical or anything like that, but let's see what Kerkow has to say here.
But I think it's important and it bears repeating. If you are a foreign intelligence service and you want information from Bill Clinton or Bill Gates or Alan Dershowitz or important people, you want the secret information from them, you're not going to recruit them. They don't need anything from you. They don't have any financial vulnerabilities. So you do the next best thing and you recruit somebody who has access to them. And you finance this person. He has a private island. He's got a private jet. He flies these people down. All the bedrooms and bathrooms, we learned this week, were wired for video and for sound. And then you can get them, you can catch them in these compromising positions just in case you need to squeeze them a little bit. There's no evidence that any of them were squeezed, but just in case, and then you pass it back to your handlers. I had a trainer, one of my operational trainers, who told us when we were going through the process that the best recruitment he ever made was a copy machine repairman. And I laughed when he said it. And he said, no, I'm serious. Hear me out. He said, all of us want to recruit the prime minister. We're not going to recruit the prime minister. We're not even going to have access to the prime minister. But the prime minister's got a copy machine in his office. And every once in a while, that machine is going to need to be cleaned and serviced. So you recruit the copy machine repairman. And when he goes in there to make his repair or to clean the drums or whatever, he installs a little device that we give him so that every time somebody makes a copy, it transmits a copy back to the CIA. He said, I got a promotion, I got a medal, I got a photo op with the director. It made my career. Because every sheet of paper that went through that prime minister's office went straight to the CIA.
One little chip was doing that.
That's it.
So now, how do you use? So what do you do with those assets now you're getting? You know what the communication is. You know what they're thinking about. You know what their next move is. You know who their enemy is. You know who their ally is.
Exactly. Maybe it's what their position's going to be on trade negotiations. Maybe it's, the prime minister's got some kind of health problem that you need to know about for planning purposes. You never know. You never know what's going to pop. Maybe it's just, spam, or it's a rent-a-car application or stupid stuff you just throw out in the shredder or in the burn bag. But, that one nugget might come through. And I think that that's what Jeffrey Epstein was. Now, we know all about Ghislaine Maxwell's father, having had this long relationship with Mossad. I believe that he was a Mossad access agent. It makes perfect sense to me. Hi, everybody. I'm John.
So there you go. And the fact that we're still talking about this, and this is what they're going to do now. This is how they're going to move the agenda forward, is that they're going to keep the moral outrage at such an increasing pitch that if you stay attached to it, you're going to create psychosis. So you got to choose your battles, or withdraw your energy from the system. But very few people can do that. They're too tied into the system. Oh, you could retire quite nicely as a Canadian or American or Australian baby boomer in some very safe and secure parts of the world and live out your elder years with good Medicare and everything. But most people are too tied into the system to leave. But there's a massive exodus now too. Every first world country, white Christian first world country, young people, millennials, Gen Zs, retirees, people like me, massive exodus, massive brain drain from the United States and Canada, and I suspect Australia as well. And I believe the source of all this global disruption is in fact the aim of Israel to expand to the greater Israel, which they accuse the Palestinians of wanting to do, wipe them off the map from the river to the sea. But they're actually projecting their own plan onto the Palestinians. That's exactly what they're doing now. And to get this temple built, a temple, the primary purpose of which is animal sacrifice and the burnt offering of animal flesh. Now, I really want you to think about this. You think that the Jewish population is prone to superstition? You think this is just some kind of madcap thing they want to do to cap out their journey through the last 2 millennia? Or is there real power and purpose in the construction of that temple that the people who are illiterate in these things can understand? I'll tell you, it's the latter. It's absolutely, wholeheartedly the latter. And it's not going to stop. And it doesn't matter whether the left or the right is in power. And they're getting to that part of the game now where they openly want us to hate them and judge them, which is the karmic transfer. There's a kind of, I got to tip my hat off to them. There's a kind of energetic genius to these people. If you want to know more about the energetic transfer and judgment, you want to go back and watch a podcast called Temple Whores and Noahide Law. I did it several months ago. It encapsulates the whole thing. But I got to admit that from the observer point of view, like I would consider myself a non-participant now, right? I don't have skin in the game because I'm not living in one of those areas that's marked for destruction. But as an observer, I just am amazed at how effective these Zionists and Masons are at pushing their agenda forward. and keeping it hidden from people. It's absolutely an extraordinary thing to watch. And when I say that, I mean it's extraordinary the way it's extraordinary to see the aurora borealis, the northern lights, or to be out on a tour boat and see killer whales or dolphins. It's extraordinary to observe. It's an extraordinary human phenomenon that this micro agenda being pushed by one ethnic and religious group that totals no more than 15 million people on the planet, and a few 100 million other slavish hangers-on in the form of Christian Zionists, religiously entrained, Schofield Bible people. But basically, 15 million people are doing this, and there's about 9 billion people on the planet. And you still think bombs and guns are the weapons? No. It's going to be fascinating to watch this all play out. I don't know what I'm going to call this podcast. The Remarkable Persistence of Israel. I'm Bruce McDonald, and this has been the Telemanker Review.